Well, the book of Leviticus comes to an end this week with one of the most amazing passages in the entire Bible. It explains the last 2,000 years of history and the miraculous return of the Jewish people to their ancient homeland that had been promised to Abraham. And it is proof of the faithfulness of God to his people. So welcome to this week's Shabbat Shalom devotional, when I seek to share a little inspiration and just bring a little peace to the close of your very busy week. Now, this week's Torah portion is very hard to pronounce, but let me try. Bahar Bechukotai, and it means on Mount Sinai. And it's Leviticus 25 through the end of the book, the end of the chapter 27. So we read about the year of Jubilee, that there are 7 cycles of 7 years, and then after that, the 50th year is considered a year of Jubilee, when possessions are to be returned to the rightful owner. And every 7th year, the land is to have a Sabbath. It's not to be planted. And God promises that he will bless their crops in the 6th year, so that they have enough to see them through on that 7th year to allow the land to rest. Now, I want to read to you a very important verse, chapter 25, verse 23. The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me. So the land is never to be sold permanently because it's his land. It doesn't belong to people. He allows his children to live on that land, but they're as sojourners on his land. And so therefore, when we read through this week's reading, we're going to see the word land over and over and over. The land is so important to God. And in chapter 26, it's divided up into 2 parts. The first part is all about the blessings of walking in obedience with the Lord. And land is key to these blessings. And then in the second part, we get to the retribution that happens when his people don't walk in obedience. But here in the first part, verses 1 through 13, it says that if you will remain loyal to him and not turn to other gods and keep his commandments, then he's going to give them rain, and the land will yield its produce, and they'll eat bread, and they'll dwell in the land safely. And he says, I will give you peace in the land, and I will walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. Land is absolutely essential to God living with his people and living in fellowship with them. And then we enter in verse 14 through the rest of the chapter about it. But if you do not obey, then they have lack of peace. They're defeated by their enemies, and they suffer desolation. And after all of this, it says, if you still don't obey me, then in verse 33, it says, I will scatter you among the nations and draw out a sword after you. Your land shall be desolate and your cities waste. And then it goes on, but if you confess your iniquity and accept your guilt, then this is the amazing and exciting portion, starting in verse 42 now of Leviticus 26. Verse 42, I will remember my covenant with Abraham. I will remember the land. Verse 44, I will not cast them away, nor shall I abhor them to utterly destroy them, speaking of the children of Israel, and break my covenant with them. He will not do those things, for he says, for I am the Lord their God. Verse 45, but for their sake I will remember the covenant of their ancestors. So friends, no matter how long the exile, the covenant with Abraham will never be abrogated. And God says, I will remember the covenant, and I will remember the land that was a part of that covenant. Wow, oh wow. Leviticus 26 describes perfectly the 1900 years of exile of the Jewish people when they were kicked off the land, scattered throughout all the nations. And this is what it's all about. And it describes, though, that after 1900 years, And it could have been 19,000 years. It doesn't matter. One day, God said He would remember His covenant and remember the land, and He would bring them back. And we are the privileged generation to see this happening in our day. Leviticus 26. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Enjoy your reading this week, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom.